Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It feels good to be doing the purple feel-goods this week as opposed to the purple therapy. Luke Jones joins us now on the Lee Tessier team hotline. He'll be out in Owings Mills all week as the Kansas City Chiefs are waiting. But I want to go rear view more into this Arizona game and into maybe we start with Eric DeCosta. And I know we did some praising last week of didn't take long for, Earl Thomas to make a play, Mark Ingram to make a play, Lamar Jackson to have impact. Now we're 2 weeks into this. We're seeing more names, more players. Matt Judon looks like he wants to get paid, right? I mean, Marlon Humphrey's flying around and even in run support and looks like he wants to get paid. There are some things happening not named Lamar Jackson that are good here too.
Sure. Absolutely. To me, you really start with, we already talked about Marquise Brown. We've talked about Mark Andrews. The defense Sunday, I'd be lying to you, Nestor, if I'd say I was overly impressed.
On the back end for sure, yeah.
Yeah. And look, they got some pressure on Kyler Murray, and some of that pressure was pretty key. In fact, I can remember a couple instances where a hit, a hurry, a pressure prevented what could have been another big play. The defense, I think what saved them from this being a game that potentially they could have lost was how good they were situationally. Arizona 2 of 11 on third down. They were 1 for 4 inside the red zone. Very clearly with that air raid, 4 wide receiver offense, Cliff Kingsbury's going to have to figure out what to do inside the 10-yard line because you have that many drives down to the 6-5, 4-yard line, and you come away with field goals.
Well, you lose.
You're not going to beat many teams that way.
On the road especially, you're going to lose that game, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but they had no problem moving the ball between the 20s, and they had a slew of big plays. There were busted coverages on the back end. So that's where I think if you look at the Ravens, you're concerned going into Kansas City because if Kyler Murray was able to exploit some miscommunication, what's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid going to do against you? So it's different. One thing looking at the snap count, clearly we know the Ravens are playing without Jimmy Smith right now. They already lost Tavon Young, so the secondary's not as stout as it once was, but they had 3 cornerbacks, Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Carr, and Anthony Averett, play 100% of the snaps. Even in this day and age, Nestor, where the nickel has really become the new, quote, base defense around the league, that's pretty rare. So that does show you what Arizona was doing is quite different from anyone else in the NFL right now. But I think that's where you do look at this and say, okay, the Ravens absolutely have some things they need to clean up, and they have to clear up the communication, and they can't have Larry Fitzgerald, of all people, running down the field alone like it's a 7-on-7 drill. But I think that's where you do say, okay, this was something very different, and it was, and a few different veterans noted this. John Harbaugh noted this after the game. I think it did amount to a teachable moment for this defense. And
I think they got plenty of tape this week, right? Sure.
Sure, a reminder that, yes, Earl Thomas is a clear upgrade on paper. And yes, you can look at some of the guys that have stepped into bigger roles and talk about their speed and athleticism, that the communication's a really important aspect to this defense. Wink Martindale talked about it last week. You cannot be so exotic and deceptive and keep teams guessing if you're not going to communicate well. And I think that's what a big part of their problem was on Sunday. But again, they were really good on third down. They were really good inside the red zone, and that's where you do take some positives and you do point to that and say, okay, the sky's not falling, but much sharper effort is going to be required Sunday in Kansas City if the Ravens are going to, I don't want to even say pull off an upset. They'll be an upset by point spread terms, but we saw last year that they could hang with Kansas City. But if they want to go in there and win, not just hang with them, they're going to have to be much sharper defensively than what we saw on Sunday because there were quite a few leaks. And let's remember, for all of the talk about how much they dominated Miami, you were there, Nestor, you saw there were some breakdowns in the secondary that the Dolphins didn't take advantage of, quite frankly.
Well, also, there have been two very, very hot days that they've played now. They played two 100-degree days, and the first week it was easy to get bored. And that's why I started tweeting in the second quarter when it's 35-3. Well, at least Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to run them around out there and going to look to pick up 20-yard passes and break them down and embarrass them. They found themselves in a real football game. You literally on Sunday that might not have should have been a real football game against a team that might only win 3 or 4 games this year. I mean, honestly, and I think Kyler Murray's nice and all that. But the fact that they did shut it down and it was the offense and it was a big play and it was, it was an aerial show for Lamar, that's cool. But the defense getting off the field as well. I mean, the offense grinded the ball out at the end of the game. It would be nice to see some three and out smackdowns for them, right? And I did start this segment by saying Eric DeCosta did things here in the offseason that he's got to feel good about the pickups that they've had. But I also feel like there's a lot of guys playing for money here, too. And they've also dangled some things out there in front of some hungry young football players where they would have some cap space because they didn't use it on Mosley. They didn't use it on, any of the offensive linemen the last couple of years. So this is a little bit of a trial period for some players playing for some big money as well. And it will be interesting to see where Matt Judon is 6 weeks, 8 weeks from now. Marlon Humphrey, who, when it's his turn to get in line, is going to be a $25 million cornerback, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the exact number will be, but he's going to be a guy that is going to want to be the highest-paid corner in the NFL, and that's reality. But to the point you just made before we get back to some of these individuals, they did force 2 3-and-outs to end the game. I mean, that was good to see. The final 2 drives for Arizona, I think they had -5 net yards, so that was good to see, especially after they had given up the touchdown and I mean, it was really uncomfortable there. So,
well, the heat wears down on the defense more than the offense, right? And for the Ravens, that was something to say in the heat of the day, when it got the nut cut time, they got off the field. And, and they won. And so I'm not going to get nitpicky about style points in that victory. They won 59-10 last week, and we PP'd on it, right? I mean, there will be no style points in Kansas City. You're either going to win by a point or lose by a point. And it's starting to get heady now that nobody else is winning, and they're the only team that's doing winning. I mean, they can really put some distance out here over the next couple of weeks, seeing these teams, or this thing can get closer if they're not a better football team in the next 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the next 3 or 4 weeks are really going to tell us something that even more than what we've already seen out of a 2-0 football team. I mean, the opportunities are there. We see what the rest of the division looks like early in the season, and there's health concerns elsewhere. So they have a great opportunity here. And that's not to say that they're going to come out of it 7-0 on the other end, but if they can win a couple big games against teams that we consider to be really good, starting with Kansas City, then the expectations just climb. I mean, it really is a case. They go into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs, then there's no reason to think this team can't go to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just the truth. I mean, you're talking about the Kansas City, other than New England in the AFC, which, by the way, the Patriots look really darn good, too, giving up, 3 points in the first 2 weeks of action. But
will Antonio Brown be the wide receiver when they get here for Light City?
Will he be here? That's a fair question. But Kansas City, I mean, other than New England, Kansas City's kind of been not the gold standard, I guess the silver standard in the AFC over the last couple of years. So it's a great test for the Ravens. It's not a must-win game or anything like that, but for everyone that is saying, yeah, but it's the Dolphins, yeah, but it's the Cardinals, which there's a certain amount of validity to that. There has to be. I mean, Miami's awful, and I think the Cardinals, maybe, even if they are a little bit better than you think with Kyler Murray when it's all said and done, it's still not a very good team. So this is a great opportunity as much as anything else for the Ravens to really not prove their worth, but just put themselves in a great position. I mean, you win a couple of these games over the next few weeks against some tougher opponents. We're not going to be talking about the Ravens just having control of the division. We're going to be talking about the Ravens perhaps being a team that could contest for, they could contend for a bye, to be in that kind of conversation. And that's not something I would have thought going into the season. So it's a great opportunity, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But I will say, again, you mentioned the style points. It's not a style points thing. It's looking at some of the breakdowns that they did have against Arizona, and understanding that Jimmy Smith's still going to miss some more time here. He's not going to play against Kansas City. So there are going to be some challenges there, and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to more readily exploit any issues the Ravens might have on the back end. So it's going to be a big week of practice, big inside those meeting rooms to try to clean that up, because there were definitely some plays that they gave up and some other plays that Arizona could have made that really could have changed the conversation that we're having right now about this 2-0 football team.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke. He will be out in Owings Mills all week long. You can find him, Luke at WNST.net. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. Time to tell you about all of our incredible sponsors, including Lee Tessier and the team hotline that Luke Jones is calling in on. All of our guests will call in on the Lee Tessier team hotline all fall long, including all of our Baltimore positive stuff. We've got Brandon Scott, Baltimore City Council President and mayoral candidate, joining us on Thursday down at Fately's. Big month. We got Ben Card. We got John Sarbanes. We got all sorts of great stuff up right now. Sarah Heminger this week from Thread with an incredible story. If you haven't heard Reverend Al Hathaway, please do that at Baltimore Positive, as well as Stuart Berger. That's going up this week as well. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Charles Nusinoff and Sons. Sydney's out there. He took care of my wife's. My wife banged her wedding ring, sort of cracked it in half, and he put it back together. Jewelry, watches, engagement ring, custom designs, and repair for you. Tell Sydney I sent you over there, 410-661-5050, charlesnusinoff.com. Also, our friends at Costas. I picked the crab down there with Pete a couple weeks ago. Good enough for the Today Show. Hoda loves the crabs, but she's not even from around here. I love the crabs. Bucky loves the crabs when he comes in from California. I see people over there all the time, my Dundalk friends. Cold beer, jazz music on Wednesday nights. That's when I like to sneak in there. And the pit beef. Don't sleep on the pit beef at Costas. Costas in. Say hi to Nick and Pete and everybody there. While we're at old friends, how about Amici's and our friends in the Pane Rotundo, the meatballs? I will probably have my own office like Fonzie there for Light City, because I'm a Light City nut. Light City comes here in early November. I usually walk around the harbor and have dinner at Amici's and grab a beer over there. Come back downtown. Come back to Little Italy. They had the big Maldonado Festival. Maldonado. I don't know how to pronounce it last weekend. All the artwork. It was awesome. Little Italy's still cool. Amici's is still there. Give them some love. Also, Strategic Factory, doing my Baltimore Positive swag. I'm so excited. I ordered it today. Marketing, printing, promotional goods of all kinds, all in one shop. You will see my Baltimore Positive logo on the back of my phone. You'll see it on the hat. You'll see it on the shirt. It's going to be nice. Strategic Factory. 443-548-3500, and find them at strategicfactory.com. I'm always drinking my hydrate out of the cup around here. Couple live shows to make you aware of. The 24th, next Tuesday, we will be with Pat Ricard, the two-way player, my favorite Raven, at Greenmount Station on Tuesday night. And then on the 30th, we'll be at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen with Nick Boyle, almost back to Delaware. It's sort of a halfway point for the Blue Hens. All of it brought to you by Freedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. You need my pal Carl Delmont and our friends at Freedmont Mortgage. We'll be talking to Carl this week about buying and selling homes and the market and the Harrisburg Heat and soccer and women's soccer and all that good stuff. Right now, we got Luke Jones here. We're talking some football in the aftermath of what I love to say, Luke, another Ravens victory. And, we have had a couple of 2-0s here, right? So I know you and I have had some heady conversation about the Ravens never being that 13-3 team, never having that 2.5-game lead in Week 9, never, because the Steelers and the Bengals, when Marvin was there at least, never allowing them that, good fortune, that the Ravens seemingly, and I'll go back through 24 years, by week 7 or 8 or 9, they're always in second place. They're always a game or two behind. They've always blown some game they shouldn't have blown on the road. There's always some leak in the boat. And, as John Harbaugh always says, it's ugly, it's terrible, it's our way, and it's sort of always playing from behind. Now they're 2-0 again. I put it to you and leave it to you. Is this the year where when, Christopher Columbus Day comes and my birthday comes and we're heading out to Seattle and my wife and I are, getting fitted for grass skirts, that the Ravens really are 6-1 or 7-1 or 8-2? I've been waiting for that one, and I don't know if this is that, but with this kind of scheduling coming up in division, this is a real chance to have, I don't want to say a special year, win the Super Bowl and all that, but a year where maybe we're the best team? Because it certainly looks that way right now.
Yeah, I mean, now the schedule picks up, and we've talked a lot about Miami and Arizona, but you go to Kansas City, you go to Seattle in October, you go to Pittsburgh in October, and I mean, who knows what Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers are going to look like, but it's still the Steelers, and we know that by seeing Pittsburgh come in and having Ryan Mallett beat them a few Decembers ago. So you never take that for granted. So the schedule's going to pick up, but to your point, we've seen the Ravens start fast. I mean, they started fast in 2016. They were 3-0, and then they lost 4 games in a row. 2017, they were 2-0, and then they went to London and came home and got spanked by the Steelers, and before you know it, they were below 500. And, I mean, last year we saw what happened. That's why I kind of laugh. I see all these stats that John Harbaugh teams are so-and-so in the month of September, and they get off to this great start. Well, then tell me what their October record is, because we know October has been a month where they've really struggled. But to answer your question, I think this team has the opportunity to do that because of what they've shown so far on the offensive side of the ball and what Lamar Jackson specifically has shown. We can talk about so many other players on this team. And look, there are a lot of other really good, important players on this team on both sides of the ball, but it begins and ends with your quarterback. And what he's shown to this point is why I do have a little more optimism. And I feel like there's more talent around the quarterback that hasn't been there in the past. And I feel like the scheme under Greg Roman is a really good fit for what Jackson does best. So I think it does set up pretty well for them, understanding that they can't have any more injuries in the secondary. And I still have some concerns about the offensive line, even though they've pass protected pretty well. Didn't especially run block well on Sunday. So, I mean, they have question marks in the same way that every team around the league has some question marks. But when you have a quarterback who's playing in the way Lamar Jackson has over the first couple of weeks, I will say, yeah, I think there's more of a possibility of the Ravens coming up for the bye week and, I don't know, being in a position where they might be 6-1. I don't know. I wouldn't predict that at this point because I'm not going to completely abandon my preseason predictions after 2 weeks, but I'm definitely thinking this team's better than I thought it was going to be. And we'll see how that plays out. Again, understanding they haven't exactly played 2 juggernauts just yet, but if you have a defense that hasn't fallen off too much from last year despite the losses they had from a personnel standpoint, and an offense that is much more diverse, much more explosive, and that it's certainly there's evidence to suggest that over the first couple of weeks, then why not? And I'll say this much, if it comes down to coaching, not that John Harbaugh is perfect, but I'll certainly take his coaching staff over most of the coaching staffs around the NFL. And, so if it comes down to a close game, comes down to that being a tiebreaker, I'll take that as well. So I think there is a reason for optimism. And, for as much as we talked about questions with this team, they did win the division last year. They did finish 6-1 last year. So it's not as though this thing hasn't been trending upward even before the blowout in Miami. So I think there's plenty to be excited about if you're a Ravens fan. There's no question about that.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. And, just on the Ravens thing and on the fans, a few things I want to say, because, I don't sit around and take phone calls 4 hours a day anymore, so I'll take one from you. But you were in the press box. I was wandering around the stadium. We all know what the knee did, right? We all know what the empty stadium looked like. We all maybe remember that night when the Dolphins came here, and I have a picture of 48 Dolphins fans sitting up in my section heckling me in an empty stadium that night when the Ravens blew them out. And then there was last year where I couldn't give my tickets away, and the weather kind of stunk every week. The game on Sunday, Luke, I got up early in the morning, and I drove down past the casino to meet with the friend to talk about some political issues that we have going on in our community. As you know, I'm one to do. My wife dropped me off, went to the farmer's market, came back. The city was vibrant with people and people coming into the city and tailgating and purple and all that. But more than that, Luke, when I got into the stadium And I've sat in my same seat, same section for 24 years, right? I looked around and I walked around, and now we have escalators. So it doesn't even feel like the same stadium. The corners that were these sort of bird's nest things for a beer company now are like these little sports bars. There are young people and black people and white people and people I've never seen before. Lots of young people. Lots of people that look to me maybe like they've never been to a game or they've only been to a couple of games or whatever. But whatever the Ravens have done, and I know there were empty seats, and we could talk about them, and I certainly do when it comes to the baseball team, but there had to be an infusion of different people coming to the games now that the Trumpers and the farmers and the old people and the escalator people, that those people said, I'm not going anymore, right? Like after the knee, there were clearly many, many faces, old white men generally in my section, who are not there anymore. And now there are other people in those seats, and I'm fascinated to know who's going to be in these seats 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, because what I saw in the stands Sunday, Luke, was a different vibe for the team. And again, these people did not know when to cheer. You know what I mean? The place was deathly quiet for long stretches. It does feel like everybody's on their phone. You know what I mean? I'm being honest, in a way that the old men weren't, right? It's a different crowd, Luke, and it's good for the Ravens. They needed that, but I felt a real worm turn in the franchise on Sunday, and the excitement that Lamar is bringing, that a lot of the people in the stadium, how about this, Luke? A lot of people in the stadium on Sunday never saw Ray Lewis come out of that tunnel, okay? You know what I mean? Like a really good percentage, 20, 30% of the crowd never saw Ray Lewis dance. How about that?
Yeah, it's crazy, and I don't want to speak too much on this because I was in the press box. I wasn't walking around and really seeing it, but it does have a different vibe, and it's Lamar Jackson. It is. I mean, are there some other elements to it? Sure. And by the way, I'm still not convinced the many that said they were staying away are staying away for good, because I think part of it is they won the division last year. They made the playoffs. They have a young quarterback who is proving that he's not a running back, is proving that he can throw, and has put up some really impressive numbers the first couple weeks. So I don't think that crowd has necessarily gone away for good. But week one, I will say this, and I think there's always a recency bias when we talk about this. There always is a little bit more of a buzz. There is a little bit more of a quote, event feel to week one, in the same way that we talk about opening day, in the same way that we talk about Preakness not being some revitalization for the horse racing industry. So there's a little bit of that, but there definitely was a different vibe. And even the Ravens, I mean, they changed up the presentation. No more U2, which I'll miss, but For Whom the Bell Tolls, I thought was a good... that was a good song for player introductions, and Lamar Jackson being last out of the tunnel. And no, he didn't do the squirrel, but he was waving a towel and running out, and the place went bonkers.
Yeah, there's no more Suggs. There's no more Ray. There's there's no more Joe. There's no. It's just. It's a new day, and the Orioles should hope for that too one day with John Means and Adley Rutschman, in the same way that Eddie Murray came after Frank Robinson, and and then Cal Ripken came, and then Adam Jones came, and that's just the way this goes, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's not something to mourn. I mean, Joe Flacco, when his career's over, he's going to come back to Baltimore and be put in the Ring of Honor and going to be celebrated for Super Bowl 47, and that's great. And Haloti Ngata was the legend of the game for the Ravens on Sunday, and he was out there wielding the shield and looked pretty cool. And Ed Reed's in the Hall of Fame now, despite going off to Houston and the Jets for that last year that no one remembers. Terrell Suggs is going to have a very similar fate in that regard. It's not going to tarnish his legacy. That era is over, and that's not to say that it shouldn't be celebrated or remembered. It will always be celebrated. It will always be remembered. I think anyone who experienced the Ray Lewis dance, as you mentioned, maybe a lot of people there Sunday never got to experience that, but anyone who did will never forget that, and the chills you would get, and just the absolute euphoria that would come over the crowd. But that's over, in the same way that, you mentioned with the Orioles. I mean, it happens. I mean, no one plays forever. So
But it is an exciting new day. And if you haven't been down to see Lamar play, I mean, Don Moeller turned to me at one point, and he's like, there's nothing like going to a game. Like, you know what I mean? It's been that long since we've been at that kind of a game. And Don goes to Orioles games, takes his kids and practice and whatnot. But, Don turned and said there's nothing quite like a game. And my wife got a sunburn. She can't speak on Monday because she screams on third down, and she has her favorite Raven now, and Mark Andrews. And I had to show Mark Andrews the picture of my wife wearing the meter that he wears on his leg. And so my wife has a favorite player. I have a favorite player now, and Pat Ricard. He seems quite uncomfortable with the fact that he's my favorite player now. But how would I not love a two-way player that's sacking the quarterback on one play and busting up linebackers on the other? I mean, how do you not love that, right?
Sure. I mean, it's fun. And again, that's not to say that you have to put away your Ray Lewis jersey or put away your Ed Reed jersey or Suggs or Flacco.
Matter of fact,
whoever.
wear them. I told my wife, Flacco's on sale right now. I told her, get a Flacco jersey. You wear a Flacco jersey, it'll never not be cool. He's a Super Bowl MVP. You know
exactly,
what I mean?
And especially when he retires, then it's retro. Then, right? I mean, that's. There's nothing wrong with that, but
she put the jersey back on like it stunk, like it smelled funny or something. I said, don't do that to Joe. Come on.
But at the same time, go buy a Lamar Jackson jersey and have fun with it and embrace this. And look, we don't know where it's going, and that's what's fun about this. That's why I coined it last year, embrace the weirdness. Well, it doesn't feel nearly as weird anymore when you're seeing Lamar Jackson throw for 270 yards and 7 touchdowns over his first 2 games. But it's different, but that's okay. And anything Lamar Jackson accomplishes will not diminish what Joe Flacco accomplished. And at the same time, Jackson deserves every opportunity and time to carve out his own legacy. And guess what? He might end up being way better than Joe when it's all said and done. We don't know that. But just don't worry about the big picture as much when it comes to someone being sent on his way, traded, cut, released. Just enjoy the moment because
I remember when Anquan Bolden, all those PSLs got canceled.
Yeah, I remember when I remember in 2011 when the lockout ended and the Ravens released Derek Mason and.
I was pissed when Kim Herring didn't come back. So, I go back.
Change is inevitable. And that's not to not be cold to it. I'm not saying not to care about it, but enjoy this. It's fun. I saw a lot of people were tweeting me because I mentioned I like the fact that the players came out to a different song than Where the Streets Have No Name. Look, I love that. I'll always remember that. But it is a new era. So I like the fact that there's a new song for player introductions, and they changed it up. And,
Move Those Chains is gone. There's a lot of things that have come here. Now, Dan runs around and spells Ravens, and everybody loves that, right? So,
but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, because I've mentioned this on a few occasions, they put the Ravens shield back at the 50-yard line for the first time in, I think, 4 years. I dig that. I like that way more than just putting the Raven bird at the 50. So there's something, as much as we're talking about change, there's something where they went back to something that was tradition. So, there's a happy medium here. We celebrate tradition by all means. Don't forget the players of the past. But there's something really fun going on here, starting with the quarterback and just looking at the number of young players on both sides of the ball. I mean, the Ravens have one of the youngest teams in the NFL at this point. And that's really exciting when you consider how good they might be now and how good or how great they might become over the next couple of years. I mean, might be talking about another Lombardi trophy here over the next couple of years, and that's a heck of a lot of fun, and I'll certainly take that over lamenting the past and trying to hold on to something that just isn't there anymore.
I had some good times in Kansas City, Missouri until the baseball game started with Luke Jones out there a couple years ago. I will have the smell of barbecue on my breath when I get back in here next week. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by friends up in Harford County, including our friends at Full Circle Tire and Auto. Going back to school or work for $39.99, you get a full vehicle inspection, including an oil change and tire rotation. Check out their new and improved location. They're up there in Bel Air on North Fountain Green Road. Find them and like them out on Facebook at Full Circle Tire and Auto. Our friends Johnny D's, everything's homemade. Been a little while. I've been at Johnny D's since the beginning of summer. I got to get over there. Soup, salad, real turkey, and, of course, the shrimp salad that everybody talks about at Johnny D's. Free catering hall available at all times. Pepsi. If you got a party you need to throw, Johnny is the man to do it for you. JohnnyD'sLounge.com. Onomoski, proudly serving Parkville and everybody else since 1954. Johnny's happy because the Ravens are 2-0. Just don't mention the Orioles to him right now. Our friends at Roofing by Elite, Maryland's most trusted roofer on your residential property. So if you got a residential need, Roofing by Elite is there for you. Give them a call. 301-937-4846. Brian will be here later on this week talking some Ravens. He's excited. RoofingByElite.com, committed to providing their customers with the finest roofing services and installs. They'll come to your home and give you a look. Roofing by Elite. All right, Baltimore Positive this week. We're back at Fadley's in Lexington Market. I will be eating a delicious crab cake, big fat French fries, some coleslaw, probably throw down an iced tea with it before it's all over with. Brandon Scott, Baltimore City Council President, and maybe our next mayor, joining us on Thursday at Fadley's. All Baltimore Positive work can be found at Baltimore Positive. You're going to hear, if you don't listen to Sarah Heminger and Al Hathaway talk to Don Moeller and I about making Baltimore better, then you have no idea what we're trying to do with Baltimore Positive. I mean, we are telling stories that I didn't know about that you need to know about. Period. Find them all at Baltimore Positive. All of our great sponsors, including State Fair, Jennings, where we've done so many shows over in Catonsville. We're back downtown at Fadley's. All of our sponsorship, all of our live shows, we're going to be with Pat Ricard next Tuesday at Greenmount Station eating crab cakes. And next, the following Monday, the 30th, the 24th and the 30th, 24th at Greenmount Station, with Pat Ricard, my favorite Raven, and then on the 30th with Nick Boyle up in Aberdeen at Adams Jeep. We're going to be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry. It's all brought to you by Freedmont Mortgage. So we got a lot of things going on, a lot of sponsors happening here. Whew! And Luke's going to be out in Owings Mills. Thought Maryland was going to win and get me something all worked up about the Penn State game, but Maryland let me down on Saturday, so the Maryland Terps, man, they will break your heart. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram and all over town and anywhere you are out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, Nasty at WNST.net. Our morning newspaper, new and improved, delivering to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. If you're on our breaking news service, you get it all first. That's all brought to you by our friends at Kuntz Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis is going to be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home with the SSV on WNST. I'm going to be like Fats Domino. Kansas City, here I come. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.